talking about, though, in that circumstance, is over who gets the nomination or is over who gets the platform?
Well, if we don't have the votes to get the nomination, we're not going to get the nomination. That becomes then the platform fight. Okay. But let me say this in terms of the nomination. We're going to try to get a majority of pledged delegates, and that's going to be a hard fight, but we're going to try to do that in the next 9 contests. But we're also going to appeal to superdelegates. What's not widely known is that well over 400 of the superdelegates who are supporting Clinton today came on board her campaign before I was even in the race, before the first vote was cast. And the point that I make to those superdelegates is, look, take a look at the polling, national polling and state-by-state polling. Bernie Sanders versus Trump, Hillary Clinton versus Trump. In virtually every instance, Bernie Sanders does better against Trump than does Hillary Clinton. And the reason for that is that we are reaching out and winning a lot of independent votes, not just Democrats. You're going to need independents to win the general election.
That's right.
I believe that I am the strongest candidate against Trump, and we're going to make that point to the superdelegates.
A couple points on that. You have already articulated that you think that in the Democratic nominating contest, that there shouldn't be closed primaries, that independents should be able to vote in all of them. You talked about that very strongly around the New York issue, but across the board. Do you all think, in terms of reforming the process, should the Democratic Party get rid of superdelegates?
I don't know that you get rid of superdelegates in their entirety. I think there is a role for established people to play. But as I mentioned a moment ago, it is absurd that you have 400 establishment Democrats on board Hillary Clinton's campaign before anybody else was in the race. That stacks the deck in a very, very unfair way for any establishment candidate and against the wishes of the people.
So you don't want them to go away as an institution. Right. You just think that they should hold their fire in terms of...
Well, that's one thing. I don't know. We're going to think it through.
Yeah.
There should be a role for superdelegates, but not the kind of role that exists right now. Today, they have much too much power, and it makes it very difficult for an insurgent campaign of the people to take on the establishment the way it is constructed right now.
It seems to me like the other sort of small d Democratic problem in the way the Democrats and Republicans pick their nominees are the caucuses. And I know caucuses have a strong history and they have their adherents, but they're pretty anti-democratic. They're complicated. They're for insiders. They take a lot of time. They exclude, in effect, a lot of people. That said, you've done very, very well at caucuses. What's your view on them?
The answer is yes and no. And everything you've said is true, but there's another side to that. I happen to believe that we have to really reinvigorate American democracy, not only getting much larger voter turnouts than we have in the past. Last general election, as you remember, midterm election, 63% of the people didn't vote. This is unacceptable. So we need to figure out ways to bring people into the process. We also have to figure out a way to engage people in a very deep sense in American democracy. And what caucuses do, you're right, it does take time to come to a caucus and to argue with your neighbor about which candidate is the better candidate. Mm-hmm. But you know what? I kind of like that. You know, I understand there are negatives to it, but I do like the idea of the American people becoming more engaged in the political process. Yeah, you spend a few hours on a Saturday afternoon, but you are helping to determine the future of America. So, you know.
Has its upsides and its downsides.
Right. But I don't think we should dismiss the caucuses.
Caucus states, you're safe. Senator Bernie Sanders says he thinks he could win 25 of the 50 states this year, even if he doesn't win the Democratic nomination. But even if he does, try to take a campaign that's successful and turn it basically into a reform machine for the Democratic Party. He says caucuses are safe, and so are superdelegates. Me, it turns out, not so much. That's next.